Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Everyone welcome. Surah Yusuf, chapter 12, verses 21 to 35. A detailed explanation in English. If you remember, we have covered verses 1 to 20 in our two previous presentations. These are the references, and this is our contact in case of any question or query or comment. Quick summary of the account of Yusuf, verses 1 to 20. Human intellect and its expansion is essential for understanding the Quranic system of deen. Yusuf and his father Yaqub had a strong desire to benefit from Allah's wahi. Yaqub helped Yusuf to set his aim very high in his life. Yusuf's dream was based on his conscious experiences where his elder brothers suppressed him and created an environment of fear. In the account of Yusuf, there are signs for those who wish to benefit in this life. So this whole surah requires, like other verses of the Quran, require our intense and focused reflection. There is a lot in it for us. Yusuf's brothers dropped him into a deep, blind well to get rid of him forever as far as this life is concerned, as they did not approve of the closeness of their father to him due to his being Mu'min and Saleh. Yusuf was assured by Allah through wahi that there is nothing to grieve over, as the law of requital will ensure that he will confront his brothers at some later stage with their criminal action. Yaqub, the father of Yusuf, knew that Yusuf will remain alive and achieve his aim, and that he will meet him at some later stage in his life. Yaqub had firm iman in Allah's wahi. He kept his sorrow and grief to himself, as he did not expect any sympathy from his misguided sons. The people of the caravan who retrieved Yusuf from the well took him to Egypt and sold him for a paltry amount, as they did not value him as human being. Third stage of Yusuf's life commences. Now we look at the verses. وَقَالَ الَّذِي أَشْتَرَاهُ مِنْ مِصْرَ لِأَمْرَاتِهِ أَكْرَمِي مَثْوَاهُ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَنْفَعَنَا أَوْ نَتَّخِذَهُ وَلَدًا وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلِنُعَلِّمَهُ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ وَاللَّهُ غَالِبٌ عَلَىٰ أَمْرِهِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. The person who bought Yusuf told his wife to treat him with respect. Now, this is an important point here, that slavery was common in those days. There must be some place where slaves and servants were sold or work was given. So this person, who turns out to be Aziz, very powerful person, must have gone to that place looking for a slave, and he may have looked around and even talked to different slaves, and they found that Yusuf is more intellectually more aware, and selected him and bought him. So this person who bought Yusuf told his wife to treat him with respect. Do not treat this boy the way you would ordinary slaves, because from his appearance and conduct it appears that he is from a good background. So this indicates to that he must have spoken to him to some detail and found that he is the best for him. It is possible that he may become a cause for some benefit for us, or we may even adopt him as our son. This person saw some potentials in Yusuf, and he made these very pertinent comments. In this way, we established Yusuf in the land of Egypt and made such an arrangement that he receives a good education and training, and he acquires the ability to understand affairs and to draw conclusions from events. Allah is in full control of all his schemes, but most people do not possess knowledge of this, because most people don't make an effort. Even we have seen that those many people who have come to the Quran, they still don't go beyond the level of achieving sawab for themselves. So they see their individual salvation in it, not the system of deen. How and why is this taking place? And this is the reason that they do not benefit from the Quran the way they should. The second verse is فَلَمَّا بَلَغَ أَشُدَّهُ أَتَيْنَهُ حُكْمًا وَعِلْمًا وَكَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ. Consequently, when Yusuf, after receiving training in these kinds of surroundings, attained adulthood, he was acquainted with methods of organization and worldly affairs, and was equipped with abundant knowledge and vision. These were those things which could not have been available to him in his life in the desert. So if he had stayed with his family, he would have achieved all this which he achieved by staying over there in Egypt. But he achieved these because he lived his life here in a very upstanding manner, that is Mohsineen. Whoever lives their life like this, they can also attain a similar reward. However, wahi cannot be obtained like this. So the issue over here is that now Yusuf, who came in a fairly young age and has now become an adult, that indicates that he stayed there many years. And during that time, he manifests. Now he started to manifest the divine attributes of Hukman wa Ilman, and then he becomes Mohsineen. Now we will look at some of the verses which are related to Mohsineen, because I thought that what else Quran is saying about this Mohsineen, and only few verses I have quoted over here, rest can be seen in the Quran, and we can see that those who become Mohsineen, what sort of a character and attributes they display. First one is Wallazina jahadu fina lanahdiyannahum subalana wa innallaha la ma'al Mohsineen. Beautiful verse, and those who strive in our cause, and it includes everything. The whole Quran is pointing towards Allah's cause, and we have talked about it in previous presentations. We will certainly guide them to our paths, for verily Allah is with those who are Mohsineen. And verse 1256 has also covered it, and we will see it later on in another presentation. قالوا أئنك لأنت يوسف قال أنا يوسف وهذا أخي قد من الله علينا إنه من يتقي ويصبر فإن الله لا يضيع أجر المحسنين. And this verse we will deal with it later on as well in more detail. But over here, what Quran says is, they said, that is the brothers of Yusuf, when they finally Yusuf disclosed his identity to them. Are you indeed Yusuf? And he replied, that is Yusuf replied, I am Yusuf, and this is my brother. Allah has indeed been gracious to us. Behold, he that is Muttaqee and Sabir, never will Allah waste the recompense of those who are Mohsineen. So over here, these are the two words on which I have highlighted, that is, those who become Muttaqee and then persist, that is, they do sabr and persevere on the path of Allah, then they become Mohsineen, and Allah never wastes their deeds. And this is very important. We should keep it in mind, because these things will come again. وَمَنْ لَمْ يُسْلِمْ وَجْهَهُ إِلَى اللَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ فَقَدِ اسْتَمْسَكَ بِالْعُرْوَةِ الْوُثْقَى وَإِلَى اللَّهِ عَاقِبَةُ الْأُمُورِ. Whoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good has indeed grasped the most trustworthy handhold, and with Allah rests the end of all affairs as per known laws. This is a very powerful verse, that whoever does balanced deeds, then he is the one who has held on to Allah's rope. And we know Quran says in Surah Al-Imran, and we have gone over that verse a number of times. So this is what Quran is saying over here. That remember, whatever you are doing after you become Muslim, then all these things keep the Quranic values in front of you if you want to get the maximum benefits. أو تقول حين ترى العذاب لو أن لي كرة فأكون من المحسنين. I included this verse because I thought to give the opposite side of it as well, or lest it should say when it actually sees the punishment. It could be this life as well as the next life. If only I had another chance, I should certainly be among those who are Mohsineen. So opposite of Mohsineen is perpetual state of punishment, a perpetual state of lack of self, which can benefit from this life as well as the next life. So we should not take it lightly. This is something very serious, and this thing will come out as we progress through this surah. Few more verses on Mohsineen. These are linked to Iman and Salih deeds. لَيْسَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ جُنَاحٌ فِيمَا طَعِمُوا إِذَا مَا اتَّقَوْا وَآمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ ثُمَّ اتَّقَوْا وَآمَنُوا ثُمَّ اتَّقَوْا وَأَحْسَنُوا وَاللَّهُ يُحِبُّ الْمُحْسِنِينَ. I must have seen this verse before as well, but this is the first time I looked at it in a focused way, and I was amazed at how many times the Quran has repeated Amanu wa Aminu Salihati. On those who have Iman and do Saleh deeds, there is no blame for what they ate in the past. So Quran is mentioning that before coming to this path, whatever you have done, that will be overlooked. Because Iman and Amal Saleh recipe erases everything. When they become Muttaqee and have Iman and do Saleh deeds, so first Iman and Saleh deeds, they become Muttaqee. And then Quran says, have Iman and do Saleh deeds, that they keep doing it. They keep reminding themselves till it becomes their second nature. And then they become Muttaqee and have Iman and do balancing deeds. So, Wa'asanu. So it sums it up that there should be a change in the society. Once you start doing these things and others join in, then gradually things start changing. For Allah has affinity for those who are Mohsineen. This is beautiful. Wallahu yuhibbul Mohsineen. So Allah has appealed to our inner affection as well, our inner emotions, the refined emotions, our refined emotions, to tell us that we are important people, those who become Mohsineen. الذين ينفقون في السراء والضراء والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس والله يحب المحسنين. Those who make available freely, whether in prosperity or adversity, who restrain anger and overlook the errors of mankind. Very important that والكاظمين الغيظ والعافين, this point was covered in detail in few of our presentations before, that they redirect all those negative emotions in which one feels revengeful and hard towards others to something which is positive. They are never impulsive. They think through the problems, and this thing will become very clear later on when Yusuf overlooks the faults of his brothers. He must be very annoyed, but he redirects his energies to wider issues of the society and solves the problems. For Allah has affinity for those who are Mohsineen. Again, the same wording has appeared over here from Allah's direction. Next is Fatahumullahu Sawab Dunya wa Husna Sawabil Akhirate Wallahu Yuhibbul Mohsineen. This is the best way the Quran has summed it up for Mohsineen, and Allah gave them a reward in this life and the excellent reward of the hereafter. That is both. For Allah is inclined to those who are Mohsineen. And finally, Lahum ma yasha'una inda rabbihim zalika jazaa'ul Mohsineen. They shall have all that they desire in the presence of their Rabb. Such is the recompense of Mohsineen. See, Allah has created these desires within us. All He's asking is to bring these desires, emotions, and intellect within the guidance of the Wahy. And then whatever we desire, that are bound to be fulfilled right in this life. So this is the point I would like to make over here is that, and because Yusuf had become one of the Mohsineen, so Lahumma yasha'una inda rabbihim, his desire right in this life became fulfilled, and all messengers, they met this criteria of Mohsineen, and as a result got established in the land. So this is the point we should keep it in mind, that what is applicable to them is applicable to us as well. Muttaqeen and Sabireen are defined. So I thought to again quote this verse, very famous. We have gone through it before as well. ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله واليوم الآخر والملائكة والكتاب والنبيين وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل والسائلين وفي الرقاب وأقام الصلاة وآتى الزكاة والموفون بعهدهم إذا عاهدوا والصابرين في البأساء والضراء وحين البأس أولئك الذين صدقوا وأولئك هم المتقون. This is in reference to the previous verse in relation to Mohsineen, that they are Sabireen and they are Muttaqun. So all those aspects which Mohsineen should have more or less are summed up in this verse, and it also sums up the Iman which we should have. It is not righteousness, bir, That is, the consciousness expansion will not take place. The consciousness will not achieve that expansion, that expanse, that vastness which is required for the system of being, where one becomes Mohsineen, if we concentrate only on this aspect that we face east and west. So physical movements are not an issue here. What Quran is saying is that it is drawing our attention to our cognitive abilities, because that is where the decision making takes place. No nation's outer world is changed unless that nation changes the inner psyche of its own people, unless those human beings change their own inner psyche. So that is the point over here. It is not righteousness there that you turn your faces towards east or west, but it is righteousness to have iman in Allah and the last day and the universal forces, that is the Malaika and the book and the Anbiya. To give of your wealth despite love for it. So love has been kept for our wealth and possessions at a default state, and we have to figure it out and then to some extent go against it to grow ourselves out of it. And to whom to give? To your kin, for orphans, for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask, and for the reliefs of those who are chained by man-made systems. So that means first we have to recognize these people in our society, because if we do not recognize them, we are not going to get there. We are not going to get iman. And that is the point. First we recognize it and then get on to do something about it. Of course, we cannot do it unless we go and help them at an individual level, at collective level, and then we go to the next stage. And as a consequence, we think of establishing salat as a system and execute zakat, and this self-purification is part of it, because the Quran says, "Yu'allimul kitaba wal hikmah yuzakkihim," that they have to be trained and educated and help to develop their self. Because if the self doesn't develop within a system of deen or for the system of deen, then we are not going to establish the system of salat and the art of zakat. To fulfill covenants which you have made, and as a result we make an agreement, we make a commitment with Allah that we give our life and possessions in your cause. And that is an important aspect of becoming Mohsineen. And to be firm and patient in pain and adversity, of course, these are not easier. This is not an easy path, but it becomes easy. See how Yusuf is floating through it. He's swimming through it without any problem, because he has become Mohsineen. Once he had become Mohsineen, opposition meant nothing, absolutely nothing. And throughout all times of hardship, such are people of truth and Muttaqee. Further reflections on this phase of Yusuf's life. Now, what I've done is I have jotted down some points over here, and I'm sure all of us, if we look into these verses in more detail, we will see more aspects coming before us. First is Yusuf entered the palace and household of an individual who held power in Egypt at a high level of government, and he was called Ejaz. This is how the opportunity for education, training, and self-development became available to Yusuf. This starts his next phase of the fulfillment of his aim under the guidance of Wahi. See, he is working there. The others don't know that he has got the guidance of Wahi, but he's fully convinced of Allah's Wahi, and now he's working. So his self is developing on a very rapid scale, on an exponential scale. He put his past behind him and began to strive hard on this path to achieve his aim. So he did not allow his past to become his chain. He did not think about it. He was forward looking. And this is a great instruction for us as well. While Wahi provided guidance to Yusuf in terms of the permanent values and divine attributes, he needed to gain maximum knowledge about the system, and this knowledge included land, business, and industry. And I'm sure Aziz must have had some lands, and Yusuf must have looked after them as well, because that is where he gets his knowledge of the lands and the world around him in order to be able to interpret events and their trend into the future. He had his eye on the lofty aim as envisioned in his dream and set about acquiring knowledge by making full use of whatever opportunities came his way. The Quran sums this up by stating, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ وَلَنُعَلِّمَهُ مِنْ تَأْوِيلِ الْأَحَادِيثِ, that he was established in the land. And this is absolutely brilliant, the way Quran sums it up. Yusuf landed up in Egypt as a youth. Exact age is not specified by the Quran. And according to the next verse, he worked diligently, developing his intellectual and reasoning prowess exponentially. That is important. We need a sort of a hunger and thirst within us to go for the Quranic value system so that our self becomes one of the Mohsineen. So that by the time he reached adulthood, he had acquired the ability to manifest two divine attributes of Hakim and Ali. And this becomes manifestly clear before us that before becoming Aziz, he became Hakim and Ali. He also strengthened his Iman and did Amal Saleh and thus attained the self of Mohsineen. Now, this is important that the Mohsineen has a certain character, certain outlook, certain behavior, which includes Ta'wilul Hadith as well. So, it's a very powerful statement of the Quran, and we should look at it while reading through the Quran, that what else is included in this area of Mohsineen. He needed such a self to counter what was coming in his direction next. So once we become Mohsineen, then we understand all the challenges which come to us. Some we can anticipate, some will emerge suddenly as well, but we can deal with them. It should be assumed that Yusuf would have made maximum efforts to acquaint himself with the issues of life facing people at all levels. He may have read books. The Quran doesn't say that, but it looks that the civilization has so developed, there must be written material as well, and interacted with men of knowledge, and being part of an important household with power, this would have facilitated his access to every form of available knowledge, including management of lands and their produce. This he managed to manifest later when he became Aziz himself. So I've put down these points over here. We can go through them with more focus and create our own imagination and our own perception about what is going on at that point in the life of Yusuf and how do we relate it with the life around us. In a similar scenario, the Quran has noted in this verse 28, 14 to 15, where Musa also acquired these characteristics, that is, he also became Hakim and Ali, and then goes on to confront the arduous challenges of his life. So he also follows the same path of Mohsineen, including killing a person in error, which he did it by error, and we are aware of that, and then escaping to Madian, that is his next phase of life started, and facing numerous challenges which the Quran has alluded to in the verse 20, 40. So that is important that we should look at these verses as well and see how the Quran has quoted another model before us. Each one of us needs to become one of the Mohsineen as per the Quran. This is perfectly achievable. This will then help to bring out our realizable potentials. So what we should keep it in mind is that I am becoming Mohsineen because I want to know what else is within me and then be able to face the challenges, the wrongs of the world in which we live. Another big challenge confronts Yusuf after the treatment by his brothers and being sold by the caravan people. Yusuf has already faced two major challenges of his life, which the Quran has quoted. Now he is going to face the next one. وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ قَالَ مَعَاذَ اللَّهِ إِنَّهُ رَبِّي أَحْسَنَ مَثْوَايَ إِنَّهُ لَا يُفْلِحُ الظَّالِمُونَ. This is very interesting that the Quran leaves, after declaring a Mohsineen, then Quran leaves a bit of a gap for us to look through it and look through other verses of the Quran to increase our level of understanding. And now the next challenge comes. The woman in whose house Yusuf was living, i.e. the wife of Aziz, felt an attraction towards him, but no evil ever arose in the intention of Yusuf. Very interesting over here that she became attracted to him. And of course, there is always a period before that where she might have tried other means as well. Eventually, that woman made up her mind to force him against his will to accept her demand by alluring and seducing him. So one day she closed all the doors of the house and asked Yusuf to come to her. Yusuf replied that Allah forbid. See, this is the reaction of Mohsineen. I can never do such a thing. My Rabb has caused me to reach such a highly eminent and beautiful state of character and conduct, Do you desire to make me fall from this high stature? This can never happen. This a clear transgression of boundaries, and those men who cross the limits can never succeed. So Yusuf is very clear in his aim. These things never crossed his mind, but of course, her level of self development is very, very low, very basic. Malakad Hammad Bihi Wahamma Biha Laula An Raya Burhana Rabbihi. Kazalika linasrifa anhu su'a wal fasha'a innahu min ibadina al-mukhlisin. But that woman had determined on this matter, so she was very determined. She said, how dare he refuse? And she had created such circumstances that if the bright and illuminating ethical standard of his Rabb had not been before Yusuf, he would have also inclined. The result of this moral standard remaining before him was that he remained aloof from this lustful act and did not commit evil. And in this way, he proved through his eminent conduct that he was from among our devoted servants. Later on, that woman herself also accepted and acknowledged that the intention of Yusuf did not become corrupt. So over here, I have highlighted Burhana Rabbihi. And Burhan means Wahi. The message and the values of Wahi were right in front of him, as these are before us. And those who have this kind of a self, they are not going to be attracted by anything which is wrong. So this is the point to which the Quran has drawn our attention. And this thing will become clearer as we go through today's presentation. Now, a fundamental immutable value, Yusuf manifests its uppermost scale encompassing all aspects. So we can see that how the situation is now unfolding itself before Yusuf. Quran has very clearly said and declared that never ever go even near zina or fornication or adultery, and don't even create any environment in your society which can encourage others to go towards that. And Quran says, "Wala taqrabu zina innahu kana fahishatan wa sa'a sabila." And never come nigh to zina, fornication, adultery. Avoid every one of those situations and proclivities which may tend towards this, i.e., even thoughts are to be avoided. Remember, this is such a transgression through which evil spreads through society and the gates to evil become open in all directions. So Quran says that if these things are not checked in a society as directed by the Quran, then what will happen is it will open the highway towards the wrong. And we see it around in the world. And because this thing doesn't remain confined to zina, then it opens up other doors to other evil and other corruptions as well. Because the human mind, once it is corrupted and contaminated, consciousness is contaminated with such thoughts and then such deeds, then that self is of no use for the system of deen. That self is self-destroyed. It is literally has no life in the hereafter, and even in this life, if these guys hold power, then they are not going to put things right in the world. And what we see around us is these contaminated minds essentially are running the world, and the results are in front of us. So that is the point to which the Quran is drawing our attention. And see how powerful the language used over here is wasa'a sabila. So we should, Yusuf was on the other side. He defined the uppermost scale of chastity and honor and integrity. The situation to which the Quran points here did not develop all of a sudden. The Quran has brought out the importance of individual chastity for a moment and in general in relation to human life. Yusuf has become a Mohsin and has acquired a very well-developed eminent self in a short period of time from youth to adulthood. Just see how short period it is in which he achieves a very high status of Mohsineen. And each day, each moment, his self is going higher and higher. And he's very conscious of it as well. And this is what Wahi does. And this is what we should achieve. We should be extremely conscious of it and make sure that every week our self is better than the last week. And has become an important member of the household. Prior to this episode, there may be a stage where the wife of Aziz may have tried to attract him. However, Yusuf must have ignored it and continued pursuing his aim. So this is a sort of deduction which I have drawn, and we can see to it from the way world around us functions. She with a non-moment self, this is confirmed. She didn't have a self which has any value as far as the Quran is concerned. She was under the control of her emotive self, which only sees its immediate gratification. Very important. Yusuf may even have told her about his own iman as he had done with the companions in the prison. I added this because Yusuf was a model and embodiment of Allah's wahi. And if he states that and gives a sermon in the prison, it is hard to imagine that he wouldn't have conveyed the message of Allah to this lady as well. And in any case, through his conduct, he must have displayed an extremely high level of integrity before them. But she obviously had no interest in this kind of thinking. And we observe it around us. We give message and people just ignore it and move on. Nothing changes in their life. So she followed her base desire and thought Yusuf will yield despite knowing that he is not that kind. And this is a problem of people who have contaminated consciousnesses and contaminated minds, who are only interested in the benefits of this life, and they think that the life will end with death, and live life as if it will end with death. They forget very quickly. They ignore. They say this is for him and this is for me. And they sometimes treat others who are righteous as if they are from another world. Being in a position of power, she would be used to getting things done as per her wishes. In any case, she was in a position of power, and she thought, how dare this slave of mine refuse what I'm asking him to do. Continuing this verse, these two verses 23-24, verse 12-23 states that she tried to take Yusuf away from his own self. It's beautifully worded in the Quran. The whole situation is beautifully summed up by the Quran in a few words. Yusuf had the elevated and lofty self of a Mohsineen, and she wished to downgrade herself to the lowest level at which she herself was, using her attraction and power. Yusuf responds by reminding himself that my Rabb has elevated me to a very eminent self. So Yusuf knew his self is very high, and he knew the contamination of the mind of this lady. Yusuf responds by reminding himself that my Rabb has elevated me to a very eminent self, and I see the evidence of what is coming in terms of achieving my aim. This is an obvious fire which is not for me, as I am far beyond these base hedonistic desires, having knowledge of the law of requital. Yusuf immediately seeks Allah's protection as per a movement, that is Burhan of his Rabb, and then sums it up by stating that I want my efforts to bear fruition. So he recognizes that this is the fire, and I simply cannot get anywhere near to it because it will burn me alive. I'm not here to waste the rewards of my endeavors. So he was very conscious of every moment of his life, as a moment should be, as we are. He firmly rejects her advances and makes every effort to escape the fire being created by the woman. Now, verse 12-24 sums up the confirmation by Allah as Rabb of the thoughts of Mohsineen as one of this elevated class of Mohsineen. The Quran states that he saw clearly the Burhan of his Rabb. This is how the law of requital functions at the cognitive level. I put down this comment here because I thought there is an instruction over there, especially if we are training our children, that they should keep it in mind that the law of requital functions all the time. And whatever I'm doing, it has consequences. I cannot get away with that. And chastity has us. We have seen now how big importance this has in our life. The Quran then affirms the strong character of Yusuf, that he had achieved the stature of a Salihin, those who restore balance in the society in which they live and never create any disharmony and imbalance. It is not otherworldly. Whatever Amal Saleh we do, they bring change in the life of others, not only in the life of others. We see that some kind of a balance is restored, even temporarily, at some place and in some point in time. So this is how our self develops. Yusuf lived up to his iman and achieved a lofty rank in his self-development. Now let us go to the next verse. وَاسْتَبَاقَ الْبَابَ وَقَدَّتْ قَمِيصَهُ مِنْ دُبُرٍ وَأَلْفَ يَا سَيِّدَهَا لَدَى الْبَابِ قَالَتْ مَا جَزَاءُ مَنْ أَرَادَ بِأَهْلِكَ su'an illa an yusjana aw azabun alim. As we have seen that she had closed all the doors and he refused to budge, and he said that no way this is going to happen. So he runs towards the door to unlock it and come out. Yusuf ran towards the door in order that he could get out somehow, and that woman ran after him to stop him from escaping. The woman seized the shirt of Yusuf from behind, but Yusuf speedily moved forward and his shirt became torn from the back. And both of them saw that the husband of the woman was standing outside the door. As it happened that the moment Yusuf came out first and then the lady, and they saw that Aziz was standing outside, must be returning home from some work. In an instant, that woman made up a story and without hesitating said to her husband, "What should be the punishment for the individual who formed an intention to rape your wife? Should not his punishment be to send him to prison, or maybe he should be given an even more severe punishment than this?" Very interesting development. That woman could have kept quiet, and Aziz didn't know what is going on inside. So he wouldn't have known. Yusuf could have kept quiet as well, but that is not what happened. The woman, seeing her husband, got impulsive and reacted, and she said, "Oh, this is now a trouble before me." So she now made up this story. Yusuf displays the strength of his moment self and takes this event to its extremity, zero compromise by those who are on al-haq. So Yusuf knew he is on al-haq and lady is on batil. So this is essentially a battle between now haq and batil. Yusuf used full determination and physical strength to escape an apparently impossible situation. A very difficult situation for Yusuf. He's a slave, and he could be fired, and he, of course, later on he's imprisoned as well, but he does not give up. Yusuf escaped from the door, which was locked, and the woman tried to grab him by pulling at his shirt from the back, which became torn in the struggle. See how much determined that woman was in her desires. The batil was fully determined to carry out what batil wanted to carry out. And haq was, on the other side, even more determined to avoid batil. The moment both came out with Yusuf first, and then the woman, Aziz, the woman's husband, was standing outside the door unexpectedly. He must have gone somewhere to do some work, and the woman may have even known that he has gone away and she's got plenty of time to do what she wanted to do, but he unexpectedly returns earlier. Because that is how the situation develops. Because if woman had expected him to be there, of course, she wouldn't have gone for attempted what she intended. Being a basic emotive human being, she immediately reacted impulsively and allowed Yusuf to be a criminal. A very challenging situation is created for the husband by his wife. Yusuf remained quiet and calm as he knew Allah is watching and is on his side. He had nothing to fear. So this is what Quran says, that it makes us fearless, and it does. Because what else, how much security we feel that I'm following the laws of Allah, we are following the laws of Allah, and He will never ever leave us alone. The woman did consider her husband and the illegitimacy of her advances towards her slave employee, i.e. Yusuf, but despite this could not overcome her base desire and thought she could get away with this. So woman exactly knew that what she is doing is wrong, and Aziz is not, her husband is not going to approve it. So despite that, she attempted this. The subsequent development of this account points to the state of the collective moral values among part of the higher echelon of that society, which is not based on the permanent values. The law of requital catches up. Now, next two verses are quoted over here. Kala hiya rawadatni an nafsi wa shahida shahidun min ahliha in kana kamisuhu kudda min qubulin fasadakat wa huwa min al kazibin. When kana kamisuhu kudda min dubarin fakazabat wa huwa min as sadiqin. Now imagine three of them are standing outside the door. Of course, others may have come over there as well, or Aziz might have invited somebody else. On hearing this, Yusuf said, "She is telling a lie. She herself did all this through trickery and deception, and she kept on pressing me that I should commit this wrong act, but I have escaped by fleeing from her." So this is what Yusuf said right at the beginning, Rawadatni an nafsi. She tried to take myself away from my own self. It's beautifully worded here in the Quran and a factual statement. When the matter advanced a bit further, an acceptable person from the family of the woman herself gave this decision that if the shirt of Yusuf is torn from the front, then this woman is truthful and Yusuf is a liar. And if the shirt is torn from the back, then this woman is a liar and Yusuf is truthful. The circumstantial evidence was that Yusuf's shirt was torn from the back. And the man over here, who is incidentally from the family of women, so he did not take her side. He clearly said that if the shirt is torn from the front of Yusuf, then that means there was a struggle between the two, and woman wanted to run away, and that is why it is torn. Whereas if the shirt is torn from the back, that means the woman was trying to stop him and bring him towards her, and that means Yusuf is innocent. And the case was that his shirt was torn from the back. Some points of interest so far. Please note that no physical act of zina has taken place, and hence no crime has been committed in a physical sense. So we should be very clear on that as far as the society is concerned, no crime has been committed. However, because of her evil intention, the woman has committed a crime according to the Quranic permanent values, whereas Yusuf has committed no crime as his intention has remained aloof from this, that is, he is pure and woman. So this is the point, that our intentions also carry their effects and their consequences. There was no third person in the room and thus no eyewitness. It is now the word of the woman against the word of Yusuf. If there had been no other evidence, then the case would have gone against Yusuf right at this stage, as she had power, and this happens later on. So the only evidence now in front of everyone is the torn shirt of Yusuf from the back. However, because the shirt was torn from the rear, this became circumstantial evidence which was taken into account by an elder person of the household who turned out to be from the side of the accusing woman. Note how Yusuf summed up his true plight by stating that she tried to take me away from my own self. The self which I have developed for a very lofty aim, and Allah is completely with me in this pursuit, as Yusuf has the guidance of Wahi. Next point is, we need to visualize this drama in order to strengthen our own iman. So there is a great instruction, there is a great lesson for us, there is a great support for ourselves. Our own iman in the Wahi of Allah. Yusuf displayed the firmness and steadfastness of an unwavering mu'min self. Within a short span of a few years, he had acquired tremendous strength to stand up to evil and confront it squarely. Circumstantial evidence vindicates Yusuf in this instance. So let us look at the next verse. فَلَمَّا رَأَى قَمِيصَهُ قَدَّ مِنْ دُبُرٍ قَالَ إِنَّهُ مِنْ كَيْدِكُنَّ إِنَّ كَيْدَكُنَّ عَظِيمٌ. Therefore, when the shirt was examined, it was torn at the back. From this, it became clear that Yusuf is truthful and the woman is a liar. Now, seeing that, the circumstantial evidence, the husband of the woman, the Aziz, at this, the husband of the woman said to his wife, "It is a snare of you women. Truly mighty is your snare, that you have created all this plot and that this is what you wanted to do, and now it is evidently clear." And it's very interesting that how the situation now unfolds further. Yusufu arid an haza wastaghfiri li zambiki wa innaki kunti min al khati'in. He, the husband of the woman, said to Yusuf, "Overlook this matter." So now Aziz was in a very difficult position. He was literally pushed against the wall and he was embarrassed. He told Yusuf, in any case, he thought that Yusuf should not now spread the word and talk to anyone and bury it, and which Yusuf did. But woman couldn't. That will make apparent later on. Bury it in the ground. Women are like that. What can be done? And he tried to dilute it and neutralize it. Then he said to his wife, "You are in error. Apologize to Yusuf for your fault." And of course, the woman never apologizes and never considers that she has done anything wrong as the situation develops subsequently. Case investigated and closed. Yusuf retains his employment. I put a question mark here that Yusuf still stays in the same household, which is very interesting. Finding the shirt of Yusuf torn from the back, it became clearly evident that he was innocent and it was the woman who had formed the evil intention. However, no act had taken place. The ball is in the court of her husband, as he is now aware of his wife's intention and character. The husband, however, took it lightly and told Yusuf to ignore the whole matter and that there is no need to take it any further. He then commented that all these women are like that, i.e., extrapolating from an individual act and casting aspersions on all women. He dilutes the effect of the whole episode, saying, "What can we men do?" So he becomes a sort of victim in inverted commas. We need to bear in mind that according to the Quran, both men and women have a self with a choice and intent. Both men and women have choice and intent, and they are prone to good as well as evil, whatever decision they make. So it is not confined to one gender that they can do it. In any case, any evil which takes place like this needs both men and women. Both are prone to evil as well as good. We see this manifested in our world on a daily basis. The issue here was that the woman was guilty of her evil intention, and instead of owning it up, she was deliberately accusing Yusuf in order to absolve herself from all wrongdoing, i.e., chasing after him to the door. The Quran has only provided us with a glimpse of the higher echelons of a non-Quranic society in that era, and also warned us to be aware of the level to which some of the elite can degrade themselves. In a system of deen, proper education and training will be provided on all these aspects. This is very important that people should see that Burhan of Rabb. They have to be trained, they have to be cautioned. We cannot punish people if we haven't really warned them about it. So human beings need education and training and then help to develop their self. They should understand that the abilities which we have, these can be used for good as well as bad. And we should be told that what is bad and what is good, so that then human beings can make choices. This incident and its subsequent development then gets investigated by the king, and he becomes apprised of the condition of his elite. More on this later. Next, it appears that Yusuf remains in his employment and is still serving the household, including that woman. Just imagine the challenging situation in which he has to earn his living. What can a slave do? Where is he going to run away? He can't go back to his family. We have already gone through the state of his family. He cannot go back to caravan people because they will sell him to somebody else. And within that society, this is the best place where he found a job. So he was trapped into this situation, but he never gives up. Next stage of this unfolding saga of Haq and Batil. Over here, very interesting situation now develops. One can imagine that if that has happened, the woman should have kept quiet. She should have a bit of a shame and embarrassment and not to take it further. But she was very determined because she possessed power, and her husband had allowed her to have that power. This is not just about women, it is about men as well. وَقَالَ نِسْوَةٌ فِي الْمَدِينَةِ امْرَأَةُ الْعَزِيزِ تُرَاوِدُ فَتَاهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ قَدْ شَغَفَهَا حُبًّا إِنَّا لَا نَرَاهَا فِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Very interesting verse. When this incident became known widely, of course, the rumors spread, not by Yusuf. The society, in an evil society, a society which does a lot of wrong, these things are very common. Then mutual whispering started among the ladies of the town. They said that the wife of Aziz has tried to lure and seduce her slave. She's mad for his love, but the technique she adopted for this was wrong, the outcome of which was that her aim was not achieved. The slave was declared innocent and she was declared a criminal. She should have done it not like that, but like this, so that either she could have achieved her aim or the slave could have been declared a criminal. Very clever. This is what happens in an evil society. People do not accept their responsibility. See, over here, Inna la naraha fi zalalin mubin. So they say that we see that she is misguided. She did not play her cards very well against her slave. So they are not willing to give any credit to the slave, or they are not talking of the righteousness of Yusuf, but they are more inclined to support one of their own lot. A new plot is hatched against Yusuf. Batil does not give up. So this is very interesting. The next verse. فَلَمَّا سَمِعَتْ بِمَكْرِهِنَّ أَرْسَلَتْ عَلَيْهِنَّ وَآتَدَتْ لَهُنَّ مُتَّكَأً وَآتَتْ كُلَّ وَاحِدَةٍ مِّنْهُنَّ سَكِينًا وَقَالَتْ أخرج عليهن فلما رأينه أكبرنه وقطعن أيديهن وقلنا حاشا لله ما هذا بشرا إن هذا إلا ملك كريم. So the events now started progressing a bit further. And this could have been taken a few months, it is possible, and it could have been in a very short span of time as well. When the wife of Aziz heard their suggestion, she said that this should also be tested, and she secretly invited them to a dinner. She laid down the table for them and placed knives, cutlery, etc. before them. Then she called for Yusuf. So they tried doing all that for which this whole arrangement was made, but no trick of theirs worked. At this, they became convinced of the strength of character of Yusuf, and they exclaimed, Allah be praised. He is not a human being. He is truly some angel, Malak, worthy of respect. Now they came to the second part of their scheme, so that if the aim is not achieved, then Yusuf becomes declared as a criminal. For this, they wounded their hands. This was their great trick. Now it is very interesting over here that what she did was, when Aziz's wife heard all these suggestions talking about her, she said, okay, let's come together. They must have come together and made some kind of a plan, and they met on a dinner, and Yusuf was to serve them. So when he came over there, they must have displayed all type of allurement and attraction towards him. And what becomes evident is, now these women are also attracted by Yusuf. And this is our cognitive failure of human beings, that when evil comes together, they tend to stick together and try to do it together. And this is something, the hallmark of societies which decline morally. And this is what happened over there. They tried to lure him. When they found that he is not corruptible, he is absolutely incorruptible, and he stuck to his guns, and he refused to be even attracted. What they did was they cut their hands. It's possible they could cause some wounds to just say that there was a struggle between them and Yusuf. Or it could also mean that their hands were stopped from doing what they wanted to do. So the nutshell is that they tried to implicate him into some kind of a crime, which will become clearer later. And they, in their heart, they said that he is absolutely immaculate in his character. He is truly Mohsineen. The false accusation of the woman escalates, and she becomes vindictive. Now, when this woman, Aziz's wife, sees that now this has also failed, now she becomes very vindictive and revengeful towards Yusuf. All that good which he has done so far for many years, everything is multiplied with zero. The news of this incident spreads among the women folk of the elite. Men have also learned of it, as will become clear later. Gossip and spreading of rumors is part of a non-Quranic setup. Human beings like gossiping and wasting precious time in their life. What I have done is I have looked at this whole incident in a very, very broader terms and tried to relate it to the world in which we live. I've also tried to look at the human psyche which works behind these events, because we are very clear about the psyche of Yusuf. And Quran has summed it up beautifully in Mohsineen and Salihin and Mu'mineen and all those attributes of Mu'mineen, or servants of Allah. But over here, the issue before us is how batil operates. So I have tried to look at the psyche of these human beings who are playing this game with Yusuf. The wife of Aziz organizes a dinner party for the ladies who become interested to meet Yusuf. Human inquisitiveness to look at Yusuf with a view to know what is so special in him, because of which the wife of Aziz became so enamored. At the dinner, the women themselves also become interested in Yusuf and try to be alluring, but when they find Yusuf remaining totally professional and aloof, he just served the meals and ignored them. He did not look at them or stared at them. They become offended, and as per their plot, they cut with knives their fingers in order to accuse Yusuf of manhandling them. And this is one possible explanation. The manner in which the party is organized, for example, indicating the table and knives, points to the fact that the standard of living was not much different from what we witness today among elites. So it was a very well-developed civilization of its time. And historically, this also is proven. Very well-developed civilization. And Quran has also indicated, for example, during the time of Rasulullah, Quran addresses those mushrikeen and kafirin, that people before you were far more developed and had far more power than you. And Quran says we destroyed them. because of their misdeed. Yusuf had become acquainted with all of this, and it helped him to understand the cultures and customs of the top echelon and provided him with confidence to deal with their power. So in the meantime, Yusuf has acquired tremendous power, inner power. And also, of course, he's got outer power in a way that he can manifest his courage and his strength to others and tell them, no, I'm not going to do it. The Quran has summed it up in one word, بِمَكْرِهِنَّ. So they all came together and created a plot to trap Yusuf. The bottom line is that they plotted to incriminate him. Yusuf stays strong and prefers to go to prison. His self reaches a very eminent state. Just see how his self is developing now. At that stage, Quran says Mohsineen, so he becomes Mohsineen plus plus, as the events are showing. قالت فذلكن الذي لا لمتنني فيه ولقد راودته عن نفسه. Again, the same wording used here. فاستعصم ولئن لم يفعل ما أمره لا يسجنن ولا يكون من الصاغرين. The wife of Aziz challenged her friends, well, you too have tested him and seen. So she told them, because she had got them together on that dinner, and she told them, now you have seen as well, you were talking against me, now tell me, what should I do? This is that slave about whom you were taunting me, that I could not even entice a slave to a quest. I tried everything to turn him from his intent, but nothing had any effect on him. Even now, if he does not obey my wish, then I will definitely have him imprisoned, and he will have to suffer humiliation and disgrace, because now, as a result of your trick, there is solid evidence to prove a crime against him, that he laid a hand on you too, and in defending yourselves, your hands were injured. Now, next verse is Qala Rabbi Sijnu Ahabbu Ilayya Mimma Yadunani Ilayhi Wa illa tasrif anni kaidahunna asbu alayhinna wa akum minal jahilin. By now, Yusuf had clearly seen what the intentions of these women were, so he decided that he will bear the difficulties of confinement in a prison, but will not allow the staining of his character. He said to his Rabb that the thing to which they invite me, compared to this, I prefer to go to prison. O Allah, help me and give me strength so that I remain steadfast. This is because if this does not happen and I become trapped by their deceit and become agreeable towards them, then this will be a great digression from truth. Beautifully summed up the feelings of Yusuf. So he prayed to Allah. Now this is where the dua comes in. And he prays whom? Rabb. Because it's all about rububiyyat. He wants to do something about mankind. And this is what Allah wants him to do. And this is what Quran wants us to do. So both aims are now incongruous. So he tells Allah that I will rather go to prison to which they are going to send me rather than agree to what they do. So see, there's a choice now. Either to go to the prison or to agree to what these women are trying to tell him, that if you want to stay out of the prison, then with our evil intentions, then you come to what we desire. And the Quran has made it very clear, and he himself sums it up by saying, وَأَقُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. And see how Jahil is defined over here. Reflection on the state of affairs so far. Being at a very basic emotive level of development of the self, the wife of Aziz becomes vindictive, and she should become vindictive. We see it all around in the world. People who are in a state of power, what do they do? And wishes to take revenge since she possesses the power and influence to do so. This points to a very low level of accountability existing in that society at that time. The state of the world around us currently is not much different. In the West, these things are not considered wrong anymore, and premarital relations are accepted as the norm. In the wider world, religious values contain all kinds of provisions to justify promiscuity and to avoid any punishment, and we know it. Most elites get away with whatever they wish to do. For example, at present in the world, pornography and nudity is promoted widely through the medium of the internet, movies, TV, prostitution, etc. In fact, doing all these things is far easier and accessible. And we should keep it in mind that all this material is kept over there with the intention of corrupting ordinary human beings. This is not there that by chance it has somehow landed up there. There is a big industry of pornography which is running, and there are billions of dollars in this industry, and women and men are willing to pose themselves to carry out filming and then putting on YouTube. So imagine how degrading this whole issue is for human beings. And over here, then compare it with what Yusuf is standing for. This promotes and endorses such behavior in the absence of Quranic values, that is Burhan of Rabb. Society keeps declining morally. Next point is, despite reading the Quran, the Muslim leadership in the world are silent and never raise these issues within their own public and never even mention it at the international level. Some indulge in these practices themselves. Very important. Just look at these guys making big speeches in the General Assembly annual gathering of the UNO. And nobody mentions this. They talk big in other issues where their own power is affected, but they never talk about this. I keep an eye on their speeches and I'm amazed at how they don't talk about it, because they themselves, some of them themselves involved in these things. The character of Yusuf depicted here is acquired by him through his own choice to follow the immutable permanent values of the way of Allah. He stands up with the conviction that Iman and solid deeds as a recipe will lead to the achievement of his goal. However, he does not know how this will take place, only Allah knows it. And that should be enough for us. Allah knows it, which side we are heading. We only know that we are on Sirat al-Mustaqim, and we are Mohsineen and Salihin and Mu'mineen and Muttaqee. So that is our duty. And then coming together and removing our differences and uniting our hearts. As far as the results are concerned, we should leave it to Allah, because these are according to the circumstances of the world in which we live. And we don't know what others are going to do, how the others are behaving, how the decline is taking place on the other side. And we should not bog ourselves down with that I want to see the results first and then I will be on Sirat al-Mustaqim. Then forget it. Really, Quran is not for us if our thinking is like that. Yusuf's wish is granted and he lands in prison. فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ فَصَرَفَ عَنْهُ كَيْدَهُنَّ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. And Allah, as Rabb, has beautifully summed it up. His Rabb blessed his prayer. So he listened to him and accepted his request with acceptance. Consequently, their trick will not work. So the whole point was that their trick will not work. Their plot will be multiplied with a big zero. And they failed in their attempt to lure him towards themselves. Surely Allah is all hearing and all knowing. Innahu was Samiul Alim. So Allah was watching it continuously, because Quran has said, Huwa ma'akum aina ma kuntum. So over here we see the display of it. That Yusuf made a decision that I will go to the prison, period. And Allah said, yes, you should go to the prison under the circumstances, because this thing is not going to be resolved. These women are bent upon doing what they want to do as far as their evil intention is concerned. Next is Summa badalahum min ba'de ma ra'ul ayate la yastununnahu hatta hi. After having failed in this way, these women launched a false case against Yusuf. The judges saw from various aspects that Yusuf is innocent, but despite this, they considered it befitting that Yusuf should be apportioned the punishment of imprisonment for a period of time. See, no punishment is specified. He's just put into the prison, and because the men thought, get rid of him because our women are now mad. In this kind of society, the prerogatives of the elite faction are of this kind. Consequently, Yusuf was made to enter the prison. Very interesting, these men knew, for example, Aziz knew that he is innocent, and they knew what women are doing, but they all got together because they are in it together. And they decided to put him in prison because they thought that he is a problem for our women. Yusuf gets ready for the next phase of his self-development, enters prison after life in a palace of power, and is among the Mohsineen. Now, see how things are developing and how his story is unfolding, and throughout, he does not move even a millimeter from Sirat al-Mustaqim. The self of Yusuf has now reached that state of ascendancy and loftiness where he witnesses numerous aspects of the immoral side of that society. However, he is not at all discouraged and never thinks of surrendering or giving up and running away. He knows life can come out of this state of death. And he has full iman that Allah is with him in this struggle of his and that he will never leave him alone. This is what he does to the human character and self. So there are great signs for us in this. And that is how I'm looking at it, and that is how I want every one of us to look at it. That there are great lessons. See, a person who comes from a broken family where his brothers put him into a well, and his self is at a fairly basic level, but his aims are lofty. And then he is sold, and then he lands up in this house where he puts in his best and reaches the state of Mohsineen. That kind of a self he achieves. And we have looked at some aspects of Mohsineen, and then this incident takes place. And this incident, we have seen the complexity of this incident. It's not a simple incident of one woman trying to attract a man. No, this is essentially a battle between haq and batil. And that is how we should look at it. And then see how Allah is helping him to achieve what Allah wants him to achieve, because he's a Muslim. He apprises the whole situation, now seeks the help of Allah, i.e. does dua. So the meaning of dua comes out, makes firm his resolve that I will go to prison willingly and let the law of requital continue doing its job. So he knows that this is a time of respite and law of requital will take care of it at some point in time. The justice system favors the powerful. We observe it in our world as well. And despite knowing that Yusuf is innocent, decides to lock him up for some years in the prison to cool things down. We have to assume that these women had sufficient power so that despite the Aziz, the husband of the leading woman, witnessing the innocence of Yusuf, he allowed this to take place. So he's watching it and he's allowing it. The Quran has left it to our imagination to figure it out and relate it to the world in which we live. This also, and this is how our intellect develops. If Quran has put everything on plate, then how are we going to learn? How are we going to develop our intellect? How are we going to use our akal to make our akal stronger? So this is what Quran is trying to point to us, that don't go through these verses as if for seeking swab. The swab is in understanding these verses and then applying our own self and to become Mohsineen and then see how the results appear in our own life. This also explains the psyche of not being offended by whatever else these women may be doing, to which these men were also a party and witness. This is how the whole situation is developing and has developed. So Aziz was not offended as well. So he went along. So if we see the first incident where he found his wife accusing Yusuf, had not reached because of suddenly or spontaneously at that point in time. No, these men allowed it to happen in their society like that because their minds were corrupted. And this is important. We see this kind of injustice across the world in every country where innocents are locked up on trumped up charges and the police even plant false evidence to suit their requirements. This aspect will be dealt with effectively under the system of Deen. No one with a non-Quranic self will be allowed to get anywhere near the justice and court system. So I put down this comment as a feeler for us looking ahead. But this story doesn't end here, we know it, and we will then see the character of King as well. Because all this is happening under his regime. What is he doing? What is his role? It's just to sit over there and do nothing. And of course, he is doing nothing. That is why this whole situation is developing like that. And Yusuf is witness to that. And Yusuf must have told him as well when he met him later on. These things we had to extrapolate using our own intellect. And that is how our intellect grasps the situation as it is developing in these verses and then relates it to the world around us. So that is how the birth is taking place. That is the vastness of our mind, our consciousness is not developing. So consciousness is expanding exponentially in our case as well. Finally, a few points for our profound reflection. I had finished this presentation earlier. Then I thought, wait a minute, there is something coming out of this whole saga. And I added this slide at the last minute. Yusuf worked in the palace of Aziz and his wife for years and must have carried out numerous tasks related to the household and their business, for example, the management of lands, etc. He established his integrity and honesty through his words, conduct, and strong character, which the Quran sums up as Mohsineen. We have seen some traits of these Mohsineen as well. This self of Yusuf was not bestowed on him by Allah. He acquired it using the light of Allah's wahi to develop it. Very important for us that whatever he is doing, we are also doing it. at our own at this point in time. And that is why we come together and then share it through question and answer session. So there is a lot of instruction in it at our own. So we should not look for some kind of a collective effort at this stage. At this stage, if we can develop ourselves the way Yusuf developed himself, then we are essentially on this path very firmly footed. And with steadfastness, the results will appear at some point in time in the future. Despite this conduct, over a period of years while staying with that family, the Aziz, his wife, the women around, and other officials of the king unhesitatingly dispatched him to the four walls of the prison despite knowing him to be innocent. So that is the question which came to my mind. That, wait a minute, he's done so much good, and they ignored all of that and put him into a prison. There was no need to put him into the prison. They could have given him some other task. No. The revenge and the vindictiveness was so at such a high scale that they all got together and said, how come Yusuf did not do or became agreeable to our women folk, and our women folk should be kept happy. So this is that point which I thought should be brought out. And this needs our intense reflection. Why did they do this? We need to explore this closely, as despite his well-known eminent character, they still treated him as a slave servant. He never went beyond his initial status of slave. They still considered him as a slave. They did not value him as a human being, and they did not at all value his righteousness. And this is a point on which we should concentrate and look at it. Who was a non-human entity in that family and society and was considered to have no rights, feelings, emotions, aspirations, desires, needs. See how alive Yusuf is in that environment by becoming Mohsineen. To what level his consciousness must be. And we are here to analyze that and see how much we ourselves are learning and how much our own consciousness, vastness is expanding. So that is the point I'm trying to allude to, that this is the way we have to think in all our future presentations. Yusuf, of course, had already perceived this side of the human psyche from the conduct of his brothers. For Yusuf was prepared for this. He was not surprised because he was Mohsin and he knew what is going on in that society. As we know today what is going on around us, and we do not accept it. We reject it, and we are looking forward to changing it and replacing it. Human beings who have a non-Quranic self see the bad more than the good, and that is their default state. And this was proved in a study some years ago, that marriages in which there is a ratio of good to bad of 5:1 survive. So they say that in a marriage where there is a lot of good and only 5:1 ratio, that one odd mistake and error here and there or misunderstanding, those will survive. But if the ratio starts falling below 5:1, while marriages in which the ratio goes below 3:1, I just put it down off my memory, but they say that if it is 4:1, then there are problems and altercations start within the family, and 3:1 means these crumble and break up. Human beings condemn each other over one bad deed, one bad mouthing, over perceived bad feeling, and break up. Human beings are very good in giving up. That's why, if you remember, I have in all presentations, in many presentations, I said, don't give up. We must not give up. If we have taken this Muttaqee, if we are convinced of it, then leaving or giving up is not an option for us. Where will we go? And what are we going to do with death? Because breaking up is easier to do in life. It takes years to build up a relationship, whilst breaking up can take place over an iota of unconfirmed doubt and suspicion. The Quran invites us to overcome this default tendency through Iman and solid deeds by manifesting the divine attributes and remaining within the permanent values. Providing education in this aspect is essential if we wish to have happy families and happy world. So I thought to put it down over here. Of course, this point will come again once we proceed through this presentation, or Surah Yusuf, because Yusuf, when he overlooked and forgave his brothers, this was based on that kind of a thinking of his, that these brothers were brought up in that environment in which Wahi's training and education was not available to that extent, or they ignored it as well. And he saw that when human beings commit these kind of errors of judgment, there is always some kind of a psyche working behind that, and also the environment contributes to it. And more on this later. This is the reason the Quran has put so much emphasis on the balancing of these. See, Quran says that those whose scales are heavier, of course, after Iman, they are the ones who will, Fawzal Azim, the Quran calls it, they will achieve that the Jannah, or acquire that Jannah through their own efforts. So we as Mu'mineen, as Salihin, as Mohsineen must also keep it in mind that when we assess other human beings' deeds, we should keep in mind their good as well as bad together and see how much good is over there. We need to look at the good as well as the bad in each other and appreciate the good. Recognize the bad and provide warning and education and training. Don't just assume that things will take care of themselves. And finally, a few words of appreciation cost nothing, but can help develop ourselves, as this is how we learn to recognize good in the light of the Quran. And thanks for your time and for sharing this presentation. Assalamu alaikum.